Alright, and last video ended again abruptly when my battery went dead. Just when things were getting exciting. But anyway, where I left off, I finished removing the upper control arm. I've got this area of the frame clean. I'll probably wire wheel it and put some kind of coating on it. I'm thinking of using the POR15. And now I've got all the components out. Upper and lower control arms and springs and everything, so I'm going to clean everything up and inspect everything for damage and see what I got. Alright, so I cleaned everything up and everything looks good. I used that WD-40 rust soak and got everything pretty clean. Things are already starting to surface rust again though. The biggest problem I found, I didn't find any cracks or anything, but in these supports, this bushing, the bushing is screwed into the support, and this bushing has been tack welded, and same on the driver's side has a tack weld. And probably what has happened is the knuckle support is, the threads are worn out. This is a special thread on this bushing, and it's a self-cutting thread, and if the bushing is slightly worn out, when you go to torque it down, you can't get it to torque, and so I think people would add this tack weld to hold the bushing in. And the reason I think that is I'm familiar with it, not on Cadillacs, but on Mopars. Ball joints had this same type of thread that was self-cutting, and a lot of times upper ball joints especially were notorious for popping out, so mechanics would tack weld after they screwed the ball joint in. They would tack weld it. So I think that's what's going on here as well. I could grind this. It's a nasty looking tack weld. I could try to grind it off, clean it up, and undo the bushing, take the bushing out, but if I do that, I run more risk of further destroying the thread inside the support if I leave any little bit of weld on there. So the right way of doing this will be to replace the knuckle support. The problem with that is finding the knuckle supports. So I found a vendor online, but they want $600 for a pair of them. So I took a chance on another junkyard in Minnesota and bought them for 75 bucks a piece. So 150 bucks, and they showed up the other day, and this is what they gave me. They sent not only the knuckle support, it's still got the bushings in it, but it's not tack welded, so so that's a good thing. So I'll just have to remove these knuckle supports. They sent me everything: the backing plate, the wheel cylinder, brake shoes, you know, the whole works. Also, I thought it was interesting, this brake shoe, this is like an original shoe. I don't know if it's an original shoe, it could possibly be. It's got the groove in the front for heat dissipation, but I thought that was kind of cool. But that's what's going on. So I got these new used knuckle supports, got to take them apart and see if I can salvage them rather than my old ones, which are in worse shape with the tack welds. So now I'm going to go ahead and take the inner shafts out of the control arms. Take the inner shaft out and remove these bushings from the control arms. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but this is the driver's side. This is where the power brake booster mounts to, right there. Now, just for the record, before I take this apart, I measure the amount of exposed thread in the shaft. The exposed thread beyond the bushing is about 5/16 on this side. It's just a little less on this side, maybe a quarter. So that affects the geometry of your front end alignment. But what you do when you put the new shaft in, you go ahead and center the shaft with the same amount of thread showing on each side, so that the shaft is in the center, and then the front end alignment shop is starting from the 0 point. And if they, this isn't, I don't think that this is a typical point of adjustment, but it can be done here just by undoing the bolts and rotating this shaft. It'll move the shaft forward or back, and that will change your caster, positive or negative caster. But anyway, that's not up to, that's of no real concern right now. The main thing is to just get the shaft centered between these 2 points. And the same goes for the upper control arm as well. You want to center the shaft with the same amount of thread showing on each side of the shaft where it goes into the bushing. So that's that. These still need a little more rust taken off. I'll probably wire wheel these. I don't know if I mentioned that. I was trying to spread the arm apart right now. So let me break this other side loose. So the bushing is unthreading and coming out of the control arm, and it's simultaneously unthreading from the shaft. Alright, so there's bushing number 1. You can see this special thread, self-cutting thread. So it's fighting me. supposed to be some grease seals on here too, but I cut them off. They were so deteriorated. But that's what the bushing looks like. And I don't know if you can see this thread right there. The new bushing sort of cuts its way back in. It's a very strange thread. It's kind of scary. Now the upper control arm, just the same thing. You can get an idea how tight these things are. You can see where it actually, the nut started cutting its way into the arm itself. It really sucked in there. Alright, that's that. So, well, let's see. Go ahead and take this upper pin out. Incidentally, too, this is the driver's side, which makes this the front. And these lock nuts on these pins, the lock nuts on my car were facing the front, top and bottom. And the book says that these lock nuts were supposed to be back here. And the grease fittings were supposed to face the front. So that is interesting. I don't see where it would affect the geometry of the alignment, because either way, this way or this way, it's still a pivot pin. But anyway, just thought that was kind of interesting. Alright, so I'm not going to bore you with this. I'll just pull this pin out real quick. Alright, so that completes the disassembly. Now, when I first took these components out of the car, I pressure washed everything. Then I soaked them in the degreaser. I took them out, soaked them in the degreaser for 24 hours, took them out of the degreaser and wire brushed everything by hand. Then I soaked them in WD-40 rust soak for 24 hours. So that's how they got to be in the condition they're in now. But this is actually new surface rust, and this has been inside my house. I don't know how. I guess it's humid inside my house. There's another view of that tack weld, which that's a terrible looking tack weld. But anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean these a little further and get them ready for paint before I reassemble. And I'm gonna decide whether I'm gonna reassemble the support to the upper arm and then paint the two as a unit. Anyway, I'll just have to think about that. But meanwhile, I sent my kingpins to the machine shop along with the knuckles, and the machine shop's going to press out the bushings from the knuckles and press the new bushings in, and of course ream them and make sure that the kingpin fits in and is lined up with both the top and the bottom. But that's what's going on with the kingpin, so I'm waiting on those. I just dropped them Friday, and I'm probably going to get them back Monday or Tuesday. So that's what's happening there. So I'm going to go ahead and keep cleaning parts now.